Hey there, welcome to another episode of Brand Mavericks, the podcast that ignites your entrepreneurial spirit and guides you along the path to building your own franchise empire. I'm Neil DiPattino. I'm president of Titan Media Works and host for today's show. We've got a wonderful guest with us today. So thrilled that we have Erika Tarnowski with us. She's the franchise development director at Aroma Joe's. This fast growing coffee franchise is known for its drive through and coffee house experiences, spreading positive vibes from New England to sunny Florida with 113 locations and counting. So please welcome to our show today, Miss Erika Tarnowski. Erika, how you doing?
Hey Neil, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
I've
I'm
had
glad to be
really,
here. Thank you.
yeah, I almost didn't want to come to work today. I mean, we were having such a great conversation beforehand. It's like we should have been recording all that.
I know that would have been some great just filler even.
I know you've got some interesting things going on from your high school years to you've lived overseas in South America. So there's just a ton of things that you bring to the table in terms of just interestingness. Is that a word? Interestingness.
It is,
Uh,
yeah. It is now.
along with the fact,
NUSS.
I'm sorry.
NUSS at the end.
Absolutely.
Interestingness. Mhm.
That's right. I like that. I like that. And also you just happen to have a really cool job too, working with Aroma Joe's. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about franchising. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but first we want to talk about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, please.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I was born on a hot July evening. No, I'm just, we won't go back that far. So I do I will go back a little bit though. I kind of start from where my life in franchising began, and I work backward, or I kind of go back and forth. But I don't know if you've had this experience. I know I certainly have that in franchising. There are very few. I could name maybe two people in all of franchising who have intentionally gotten into this space. We've all fallen into it somehow. It's very rare that you find somebody that was like, I'm going to be in franchising, and I knew it from college.
Uh,
So it's always a fun story to know where people came from in the franchise space. In my case, I majored, I did, when I went to college, I majored in political science and international affairs. And I'm setting the stage there because it brought me to Brazil, where I did my semester abroad. I worked very hard on my language at the time. Not that it was going to be what I was going to do, but I thought it was a really important piece of the learning and the culture, and really being a part of everything there. So I worked really hard to learn that. I came back to the US, and, I'm from New Hampshire, right? I lived just across the border in Massachusetts. It's not a super multicultural area. However, there's a fairly large Brazilian population in the Boston area north, and
hmm,
I guess around, but between where I was and Boston, there's a fair number of Brazilian folks. So I ended up connecting with a couple of them, became friends, and started dating a guy who eventually became my husband. When we were dating in 2006, 7, 8, 9. Moved to Brazil in 2010 with our firstborn. We were down there for 5 years in a little town in the middle of the southern region called São Sebastião da Moreira. Don't
hmm.
try to say it; it's fine. But it's a
I was
very
going to
rural
say
area.
that three times real fast.
I know, right? It's right. But it's, rural, small town. So I started as an English teacher there, and then I really wanted to get into translating and interpreting. So did that for a while, for about 2 or 3 years. And, at some point, I'm not sure when it was, but I realized that when we moved back to the US, it was not what I wanted to continue doing. So, and the reason for that, which was, I had to be very self-reflective at this point in my life, but it was that, the glass ceiling is, about yay high, right? We're looking maybe my ear here, and I'm only 5'3", so it's not super, not a lot of height there, right? Not a lot of vertical growth in the franchise, or in the interpreting industry. So I decided I needed that, right? I needed constant change and challenge and things like that. And so when I moved back to the U.S., I was looking at different opportunities, and met by chance through a friend the CEO at the time of Fantastic Sam's, Linda Chadwick, who brought me on as a franchise development coordinator into the Dessange Group North America, which is the parent company at the time. And I have loved franchising and business development ever since.
Nice. Fantastic. And that brings you to Aroma Joe's. So,
Yeah, I've had several, roles in between, but I don't want to
yeah,
get too in the weeds.
I totally get that. So we want to talk a little bit about Aroma Joe's and what the opportunities are for potential franchisees, that type of thing. But
Mhm.
before we do, I mean, obviously you've got a lot of experience in franchising, working with Fantastic Sam's and now Aroma Joe's. So, I mean, why would a person, an investor, why would they look at franchising as opposed to maybe starting their own coffee house from scratch? Let's say, for instance.
That is such a good question, and one that I'm thrilled you asked, because I feel like people, when they're deciding at this venture in their life, right? This sort of point in their life when they're saying, "All right, I want to start a business," right? Maybe they have a really great idea and they've got their expertise, and they really go after it. They do a great job as an independent. People that I typically speak with, people that are interested in the franchising space, they don't necessarily know, and they don't have the experience needed to kind of make it on their own, right? And they're not venturing into this something that they want to take 5, 10, 15 years to learn and ramp up and make great. And so what a franchise does, and this is why I love it, is it gives you the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, to start your own business, but with the support of a full team of people behind you, right? So it's like jumping out of the plane and wear your parachute, right? Not that I think independent owners are people jumping out of a plane without a parachute, but maybe call it like you're jumping out of the plane for the first time and you're going tandem, right? As opposed to jumping out the first time and trying to figure out how to, open your cords while you're sort of panicking on the way down. So there's that aspect of it, right? There's the support, the guidance. In the brands that I've worked with, we've made the mistakes, right? We've learned from them. We've optimized. We're constantly shifting to be better. And I've seen that throughout my time in franchising from the franchisor perspective, right? And so what I love about franchising in general, and offer to people when they come in the door, is this is a truly symbiotic relationship, right? We are in this together, and when you're winning, I'm winning, right? It's no zero sum game. You can say, what is the saying? A rising tide lifts all ships, which I couldn't tell you another sort of like business structure necessarily that's quite like that.
Okay, very good. So let's talk a little bit. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about Aroma Joe's. Okay,
Yep.
so obviously there's a lot of places to buy coffee in the world,
Hmm.
and so what really differentiates, or some of the things that might differentiate about Aroma Joe's from maybe other franchisees or franchises or even
Hmm.
independents.
Yeah. So again, a great question, because I think too at this point in time there this is such a cheesy phrase, right? But coffee's hot. There's a bunch of different brands popping up all over the country, which is great, right? It shows that there's a lot of strength. There's a big demand for it. There's a growing demand. What separates Aroma Joe's, I think, from our competition, first of all, there aren't a lot of brands that are established in New England, right? The fact that we've reached 113 locations in 8 states, highly centered in the New England area, is, I think, speaks volumes of the not only the value proposition, but the sense of pride that we have, and the organic growth, and the fact that we've brought people that we know in, family members, things like that. So a lot of our growth up until this point has really been through that sort of means, right? Through organic and referrals, and a lot of our customers become franchisees because they love our brand. What what they love about it over, again, some of our competitors maybe that are especially focused in this region, is we are such an enormous part of the communities that we're in. So every location is quite integrated with events in their community. We have different charitable events and organizations and things that we really work on building those relationships and helping out people in our local communities, right? So there's that aspect of it, but everybody is so happy when you go to the drive-through and you're not greeted by a speaker or an intercom. I would say you're greeted with a smile, right? So you go up to a window and you actually have an interaction with a barista at the window when you place your order. So that
Hmm.
person, if you say, well, I don't know if I want, two shots of espresso or one shot, and what's the difference between a latte and a cappuccino and an americano and a breve and you get really into the weeds with the coffee names, but it's you get that personal experience, and they're all trained, right? It's not like there's one person on the door or at the window at the register and one person making the drinks. Everybody does all the jobs, and they can really provide that feedback, and it's that really nice personalized experience that you get without sacrificing speed or convenience, right? It's not like people are sitting there for hours. It's, I want this. Great, it's ordered. You pull it to the next window and grab your drink or your food from there. So
Hmm.
it it becomes a very sort of in a time when our interaction with other humans has decreased so dramatically. It gives people just a little slice of a chance to have, to make a human connection in the morning or in the afternoon.
There you go. So now, are all of the locations, are they all drive-through? Are there actual dining areas inside?
Yeah, there's both. So the model is very heavily focused on the drive-through, but we do have some coffee houses.
Okay.
So most of our coffee houses do have a drive-through as well. It kind of depends on the market, b the location. So if you're going into what was an existing location, right, of maybe a different coffee shop or maybe let's say an old former restaurant, the footprint might be larger than for just a drive-through. So you'll build out a
Hmm.
coffee house and you'll get that additional sort of walk-in traffic and revenue from people coming in. When I did my training, I did it in a coffee house, and because everybody that works here has to do training as a barista in a location, which is great.
Hmm.
First time I ever pulled an espresso shot, by the way, was my training with with Aroma Joe. It's a little fun fact there, but there were a lot of people that came in and people that two or three, and they'd sit at one of the little tables in the corner and just have a little get together, or people were working from the coffee shop and taking calls and things like that. So I was actually surprised because it seems to have become such a that piece of it seems to have decreased so much, right, because of
Hmm.
COVID and all the post pandemic
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
But so again, yeah, I was shocked, but again, I think people are kind of getting back to that, and they really like that. People that really miss that, we
Hmm.
offer that as well. So there are, we have a location, for example, in Durham that is on the campus of the University of New Hampshire, and it doesn't have a drive-through, and really just where it's located. But that's not a traditional model. It's more of a
Right.
non-traditional site. So
Right. Right.
yeah,
And you said that was on campus. I would imagine most people don't get in
yeah.
their cars too often if they're living on campus. So
No,
that
no,
makes a
it's
lot of
actually
sense.
it's great
So,
there.
so now you say you're primarily in New England, primarily in the New England area, but really 8 states kind of down the coastal Atlantic coast area. Is that kind of what your model is? Is that on purpose, or is that something that you guys are doing by design?
So because our founders, so we were founded by two sets of brothers who were cousins, and they're from this area, Maine and New Hampshire. Yes, so these two, Mike and Brian, and Marty and Tim, and they were related through. They have the same grandmother.
Okay, I
I,
got you. Had to
I,
think about that for a
I know,
second
I
here.
know. It is odd to the way that you explain it, but Marty was one of the very early on, and I believe he was one of the founders. I met this is this is what I if I remember correctly, of Dutch Brothers. So he was early days Dutch Brothers out west, and they're they're from this area, but he saw that model and thought we want to break that to the Northeast, right?
Hmm.
And so a lot of what we did was very similar to that, but they're from this area, right? So the first location we had was a little literally like a square little kiosk in East Rochester, and it's still there today, thriving, doing just all day long, cars going through. So New Hampshire and Maine were really our by far the most built out markets, and really where the focus started. So when I say, we have had that organic growth, because now it's starting to expand into Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, and we just entered New York last year.
Hmm.
Marty and Tim also have some locations down in Florida. So, when they originally, the franchising piece first started, they sold their locations up here and decided to open some down there. So we have three or four currently in operation, with three or four still in development in Florida, and a lot of opportunity in that market to go in as well. What's neat about that is that you have a lot of these New England folks who are snowbirds, right? That go down to
Yeah.
Florida for the winter, so that there's the brand recognition kind of built in. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of creating our footprint down there, and then really it's about filling in the Mid Atlantic, right? And not in a way
Hmm.
that's in a very we're very intentional with our growth, very strategic.
Great.
So the conversations that I'm having with people who are maybe going into want to be in North Carolina or Virginia or you know Maryland, it's going to be a very specific person who's got the right skill set, who has the right background, who has the right financial qualifications to be able to go into a new market, to bring that brand awareness, right, without it already existing,
Hmm.
and really has the chops to take that on.
Sure, and I think, I like this, the strategery about that. It makes a lot, with that, it makes a lot of sense because, I mean, you kind of stepped on my next comment, which
I'm
was
sorry.
uh, that's okay, which is like the snowbird thing. I mean, that's absolutely right. So if I'm here in New England and I'm down in Florida and I see, your one of your locations down there, it's like I feel comfortable in
I'm
making a
home.
purchase there because I'm home. That's right. I love
I'm
that. I
not
love the way you
cold.
said that. I'm home, but I'm not cold. Okay. Yeah, I
So
wasn't gonna go there, but that's cool. I get that. I get that. I also think too, though, that one of the things that's really super important as you're growing, and a lot of businesses have a tendency to grow to kind of willy-nilly and maybe a little bit too fast, but being strategic in that manner gives you the ability to support your franchisees a heck of a lot better than if you were to open like two locations in Wyoming, or one in Colorado or whatever, and then the rest of them would be on the East Coast. So, I mean, that's got to be part of the plan too, I would imagine.
that is absolutely 100% correct. And now you got ahead of me, because that's what I was going to get into. So see, we're on playing off each other. And you're absolutely right. And that is one of the things that really drew me to this brand. So I didn't start with Aroma Joe's till I've been here about 4 or 5 months, I believe. So I started the tail end of November of 2023. And when I was speaking with different brands about my next move, I I was so attracted to this intentionality that came with the way they had grown, and the real, not concern, but focus on not doing that, right? Not going to Arizona just because somebody was from New Hampshire and moved to Arizona and thought, well, I'll bring Aroma Joe's here, or going into somewhere in Washington where there's a coffee shop on every corner, and trying to do it that way, right? Just because they really wanted to bring their hometown flavor. I get it, but it is a massive logistical challenge, and to be able to support that, we've said we're not going to do that, right? We're not going to compromise ourselves, our brand reputation. We're not going to compromise somebody that may be coming into this, right? So being very intentional about who comes in, where they're located, and knowing that we can provide the support not only on a operations and marketing level, but even like supply chain, right? So you get into distribution of product, and centers of where this stuff is coming from. And we've built these very strong partnerships with our strategic purchasing department that obviously they save our franchisees a ton of money, but they're very strong because of the fact that we have a concentration. And as we start to branch out, we have to be very strategic about that, for a lot of reasons. Before we jump to the next thing, one of the things I find really interesting, because you picked up on it immediately, and I thought about it too, is the snowbird piece, right? But in reality, our biggest customer segment, our biggest base, is the 18 to 24-year olds. So where you'd think it was that, snowbirds who were down there, we're now looking in Florida really to be in a lot of the college towns and cities, because, we know that we can cultivate that sort of following.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, because if you're like a snowbird, generally you have a little bit more of a fixed income. Like me personally, I'll use the same coffee filter like 10 times before I throw it away.
I mean, that's a
Not
lot,
really.
but yeah,
I'm exaggerating only so ever so slightly. It's only 9.
but I know what you
Uh,
mean. Yeah.
yeah, but, yeah, so, man, that's a very interesting point, I like that. Let's talk about support if we can. First of all, before we get into that though, as far as franchisee, selection, what is the process that you go through? Because that's super important, I think, because you wanna make sure that not only you're getting the right people to represent your brand, but you also wanna make sure that you're protecting your existing, franchisee base too, because, if somebody goes and screws up, then it kinda reflects poorly on them as well.
That's right. That's absolutely true. And that's what we talk about when we go through the FDD, our franchise disclosure document. We go through that together with candidates coming through the process is, I know this looks like we're being, heavy handed, but this is really to protect our existing franchisees and you as a future franchisee coming into this. So I love that you asked that because process, to me, it's about, processes, people, at the right platforms and being able to optimize all of those together. And I am a very strategic, data driven decision maker. So for me, all of those aspects kind of come together. Our process is, I don't want to say it varies tremendously from any other, from most other franchise sort of discovery processes or how, whatever people sort of title them. But somebody comes in, whether it's typically through the website, right? We're talking about integrating some of the broker networks into our lead generation sort of strategy. I've built some great relationships with some of the brokers, and so we're kind of figuring out where that plays a role here. But let's say you come in through the website, I'll reach out to you with a time, saying let's schedule a call, or one of our development agents, right, in the region. So in the existing markets, other than Florida, we have a development agent structure. So Maine and New Hampshire is under one development agent office, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New York, sort of that region, is under another development agent, and then Connecticut is under one, and Pennsylvania is under another. So they actually do a lot of the conversations with candidates throughout the process, but I am integrated with that throughout. So and they have specific steps that they follow in the process and specific reporting standards and so on and so forth. So we track to see where people are coming in, how the conversations are going, where they're falling out of the process, right? If it has to do with the fact that we never were able to contact them, maybe they weren't real leads, maybe we need to focus lead generation efforts somewhere else. And then we have, FDD. Well, if you're giving out the FDD, people are falling off after that. Why? Are you having conversations with them? What are the objections? What are the issues that are arising so that we can maybe figure out if there's something we need to adjust on our end, right? If there's a huge red flag and we're hearing it over and over, well, let's revisit that, right?
Mhm.
So there's all that, and then we do ask people to do actually an in-store discovery day. So they actually have to go work at a shop for a day, spend the time with the franchisee, really get that touch it, feel it, taste it kind of experience, and not because you necessarily are going to be spending all day every day in your shop, but we know that really the shots that do the best the quickest are the ones that have the owners there, right? They've built a strong presence, they've established that, really their investment, their personal investment, not just financial, their personal investment in the success
Mhm.
of that shop, and making sure that's known throughout. So they do that. They do a discovery day at headquarters with our team. They get to interact with the different department heads, and then they do an interview with our CEO and our COO. They review their business plan together, and then it's off to signing. So it's a very sort of seamless process and transition into that, because then everybody's prepared, everybody's ready to welcome them in, and they go right into design and construction from there. So.
Well, fantastic. Sounds like you offer a lot of support, and that's awesome. That's absolutely necessary in a franchise. One of the reasons why I would buy a
Mhm.
franchise if I were interested in doing so. Let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit. We're getting kind of close to the end here, but I don't want to
Yep.
leave without talking a little bit about the financial side of it. Can you maybe give
Great.
me a ballpark of what it would cost if I wanted to invest in a single location, what that might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a caveat to this, right? Because we are in FDD season. FDD renewal season is upon us. And so and one of the overhauls this year was to our financials, mostly because of some new reporting software that we've been able to integrate with several of our locations in order to get a better look at EBITDA as opposed to just gross revenue. So we're trying to integrate some of that. And so at this point, our you know highest performing store does about 1.8 million in revenue a year. And again, that may be higher from 2023. I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that, but that's the average. That's what it was. Um, Initial investment, you're looking at anywhere from 500,000 to 1.2, 1.3 million. And that really will depend on whether it's a retrofit, the size of your footprint. If you're doing, we've noticed or we've found that some of these standalones actually end up being very costly because of site work, not even necessarily the
Sure.
build. It's the site work that goes into it. I mean, we've had towns that have made us put in a turning lane, right? So, on their their existing roadway. So it's the kind of stuff, again, I always go back to the fact, like, these are the things we've learned, and that's going to cost you an extra 40, 50 grand. So let's, maybe if that's a concern, we stay away from that particular site.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So
And that's
again,
all. And don't mean to interrupt you, but I mean that's all
no,
part of the process with your
that's right.
franchisees too. I mean,
That's
like
right.
you're helping them through that. So if I'm doing it on my own, I've got to do that on my own, and that I don't have the knowledge to do that, and maybe I don't have the time to do
Yeah.
that or the desire
And
to do
maybe
that.
you've
So that's
gone through the zoning board and the planning board and so on and so forth, and this is a curveball they throw in at the end, and you say, you know what, I'm already in it this deep, I
yeah,
might as well, right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's a lot. So we're also, and just as a kind of part and parcel to that, I'm working very closely with our CFO right now on establishing some very solid banking relationships. So we'll start to integrate that into the process with franchisees. So primarily, a first-time franchisee is going to do an SBA loan, right? And there's banks that can facilitate that, and we can start that process earlier on. Banks that we've already worked with, banks that are dying to work with us because we have a very high what they call a fund score. So Fran Data is a great outlet for sort of third-party evaluations, and they've come to us and said, "Hey, you guys have a great fund score. You should really be connecting with some of the banks that we partner with, and so on and so forth." But so we're integrating that into the process and giving people those options to really start early so they can get to market quicker. Which I think is such a valuable piece of this whole thing, because the SBA lending financing process can be very long and drawn out, a lot of hoops to jump through and things
Hmm.
like that as well. So
Yep.
definitely part of it for us. But yeah, I mean, I say 1.8 high. It varies, right? It goes. It really the two biggest factors. I would say the first biggest factor, X factor, is a franchisee, right? And second is having the right location. So
Right.
you're putting the money in, whether if it's a retrofit, you're usually looking at a lower cost, but maybe not as much opportunity for drive-throughs.
Right.
And if it's a ground up build, you're probably going to look at a million or possibly more.
Well, it sounds like an interesting investment, and if anybody wants to learn more, and wants to talk franchising or talk about Aroma Joe's, how do they get in contact with you, Erica?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me directly via email, etarnowski@aromajoes.com, or just visit our website, aromajoes.com, and just click on the franchising tab, and you'll find a contact form on there. I am more than happy to just have an initial conversation with anybody who's doing some early research. I should make one note before I send you to the website. We are in the process of updating it, so there's going to be a lot more information on it that you can kind of dig into if you want to do some self guided research before reaching out. But I'm always happy to hop on the phone and chat more with anybody interested.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on our show today. You're like wonderful, and a lot of information, a lot of fun.
Yes, lots. Thank you so much, Neil, for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you. Hey, folks, that's all we have for today. So thrilled you could be with us. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Brand Masters is sponsored by Titan Media Works, providing podcast production and guest booking services for those who want to be in the podcasting space. Check us out at titanmediaworks.com. That's works spelled WORX. And also check out all the other great hosts at the Small Business Delivered Network at smallbusinessdelivered.com. Hey, be sure to stay tuned for more Brand Mavericks coming your way soon. Until next time, keep on building your empire. Have a great day. Bye-bye.